So thanks everyone for coming. We're very thrilled to welcome Joseph Fink, Meg Bashwiner, and Symphony Sanders. Joseph Fink created the Welcome to Night Vale and Alice Isn't Dead podcast and is the author of the novel Alice Isn't Dead and co-author of the New York Times bestselling novels Welcome to Night Vale. It devours the faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home, and 4 Welcome to Night Vale episode script books as well. Megan Bashwiner is a writer, performer, tour manager, podcaster, and producer. She's the MC for the international touring live show of the Welcome to Night Vale podcast. She's an alumni member of the acclaimed New York theater company, the New York NeoFuturists. The first 10 years, 2 sides of the same love story, is Joseph and Meg's sometimes hilarious, occasionally heartbreaking, and always entertaining joint memoir chronicling their first 10 years of their relationship from both sides. In 2009, 22-year-old Joseph newly arrived to New York City from the West Coast. He was juggling odd jobs to pay the rent and volunteering with a theater company in the East Village so he could snag free tickets to their shows. Meg, a 22-year-old aspiring performer and playwright, was living with her parents in New Jersey, working a desk job, and commuting to her internship with that same East Village theater company. Joseph's and Meg's stories meet when they both find themselves selling tickets in a cramped box office. They quickly became friends, and within a year, they were a couple. In their candid, soul-bearing memoir, Joseph and Meg each tell their side of the story as they remember it without having consulted the other. Joining Joseph and Meg in conversation this evening is Symphony Sanders. Sanders is a Chicago-based actor who voices Tamika Flynn on the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, co-hosts the podcast Good Morning Night Vale, as well as being featured in numerous other podcasts and regional theater around Chicago. When not acting or podcasting, she is an aerialist and a fitness instructor. All 3 of our guests are joining us from Rhinebeck, New York tonight. This evening's event will also include an audience Q&A. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to ask a question. If you like a question that you see somebody else has already asked, you can hit the thumbs up button and upvote that. And we'll mix in some questions from you guys at the toward the end of this talk. And so, and we'll also be putting a link in for Meg and Joseph's book. You can to support them and to support Powell's by purchasing a copy of their book from powells.com. Meg, Joseph, and Symphony, we're so excited to have you all with us tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having us. Yes. Excellent. Hi, babes.
Hi, Symphony.
Symphony's in our basement right now.
I know. I'm the troll in your basement.
We got to hug Symphony for the first time since March of 2020.
As we are now fully vaccinated and still consciously social distancing throughout the rest of this panoramic, but I'm glad I was able to see you guys for the first time in 14 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing. How are you, first of all?
Pretty good. I took a bike ride. You all took a walk. It's a
nice.
Lovely day here in New York.
Yeah, Symphony and I took a really nice walk before this. We found a spine on the side of the road.
I know, it was frightening. And I foraged a little bit for some garlic scapes. I found some on the side of the road and I put it in my mouth. It was great. So, friends, you didn't always live up here in beautiful Hudson Valley, New York. You started when you first met each other, you were in the mean streets of the city. How is this life different for you guys from that?
Easier.
Yeah.
Easier. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, how New York City, well, I love New York City.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place with a ton of culture and restaurants and people, but it's a difficult place to live. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard to get around in. The simple things like grocery shopping are hard. Simple things like having a place to live are hard.
Yeah.
So having a functioning appliances and all of those things. So yeah, it's better for us. Because we spent so much time on the road, it didn't really make sense for us to live in New York City anymore because we really weren't there enough to enjoy the city because we were on the road so much. We were in every city. So it made sense for us to not pay ridiculous New York City rent and to put down roots somewhere quiet and peaceful that could be sort of an alternate to our busy life on the road. Was a quiet place in the country. Not near an airport though, unfortunately.
You know what? And that's okay. A little bit of a drive never hurt anybody. But you guys got your start in New York City. That's where you guys met. That's where you started working with the NeoFuturists. I know it was obviously a very different point in your life at that time. Do you think you could see yourself, like when you were that age, like can see yourself where you are right now?
I think I would be shocked that I was still on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I never really liked New York City. I still don't. I just never really worked with me. And so I like had set a strict time limit for myself that no matter what I thought of New York, I was going to only be there for a maximum of 5 years. And then I moved back because I really love California. And now it's 12 to 13 years. I guess it's 13, almost 13 since I moved to New York. And I'm still on this coast. So I think me in 2009 would be shocked and dismayed that I'm still in New York State.
But Meg, you are an East Coaster from the jump.
So I was born and raised about 30 minutes outside New York City in New Jersey, in the lovely northern New Jersey. So this city had always kind of just been the city to me. I think most people who live in the suburbs of a city, it's the city to them, whatever city that is, whether it's Portland or Los Angeles or wherever. So that was always the city. It's where most of my family is on the East Coast. So, and I'm very close with them. So it would be challenging for me to leave them. And also the theater company at the time, I was kind of I had spent 10 years with the NeoFuturists, and it was a really great artistic home for me. So that's kind of why we stayed, is because I didn't want to leave that while I was still making the art that I wanted to make there. So I trapped Joseph into staying on the East Coast.
Well, Joseph, like you said, you're not like a huge fan of New York, but you came here, and how did you find out about the NeoFuturists? Like, how did you even get involved with that?
Yeah, I actually, so I met someone at my very first concert in New York was Amanda Palmer in October of 2008 at Webster Hall. And I met someone there, and we decided to go on a date, and she suggested the NeoFuturists. So I went there on a first date with someone who I then did not see again, but I then went to the NeoFuturists almost every week for like 3 years. So that date worked out really well in one way.
In the longscape of your life, you actually did mention that in the book. For as much as New York can be a tough place, obviously you guys found an artistic home here, right? And beginning to your creative career. Joseph, I know you were always interested in being a writer, correct?
Yeah, I basically I was always fascinated by those people at like festivals or whatever who tell stories to kids.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a storyteller. And then when I learned that wasn't mostly a job, but there was this thing called writer that was similar, at around like 3 years old, I'm like, great, I'll be a writer. So that has been my job goal since literally 3 years old.
That's a long time to have that dream and to like continue to follow in those dreams when you're a kid. Meg, did you have similar dreams to that, or
My
how
dreams,
did you become a writer?
I had always wanted to be a performer and an actor, and specifically comedic actor, comedic performer, stand-up comedian. That was always sort of my dream in life, was to work in comedy. And I went to school for theater. And while I was in school for theater, I found it difficult to fit myself into the mold of what theater was at the very conventional theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I was encouraged to make my own theater and encouraged to write my own stuff. And when I did, I found so much more satisfaction, and just it really opened the doors of what theater and performance could be for me when I started writing my own work and being in other new work written by people who are my contemporaries, as opposed to being in a Shakespeare play or being in an Ibsen play, but being in something that was written by my classmates about what was going on in our lives right now. And so when I had learned that I wanted to be someone who was writing their own stuff, and when I graduated, I found the NeoFuturists, which is a company that everyone who's in the ensemble, they write, perform, and direct every piece that's in the show themselves as an ensemble, and it's constantly new and constantly changing. So it really was the perfect place for the type of art that I wanted to make, and that's where I really became my chops as a writer. Really, how do you get firmed? I don't know. How would a writer
Molded,
what happens to your chops?
Yeah. They're
So
honed somehow.
my chops got firmer for sure, or stretchier. I don't know, whatever the chops are. But yeah, so that was writing my own monologues, writing my own work is where I really learned how to write.
And I know the neo-futurists, they focus a lot on the present, like what's really happening to you at the time. And you're always playing yourself. You're not a character. And that's kind of how you generally write yourself, more memoir type writing, correct?
Yeah, I write almost entirely nonfiction. So
Okay.
I write about my life. I write about things that I find interesting, fascinating, true stories, whether they're mine or someone else's. But I am most drawn to true storytelling.
And Joseph, so but you generally write fiction work.
Yeah.
How do you find that was different in this book itself? Because you don't generally write nonfiction and not memoir.
Yeah, fiction is always more interesting to me to like kind of even as a reader, I mostly read fiction, but it's still storytelling, and it's all still like putting words together, and I know how to do that. And then also like I, spent many years around the neo-futurists. I didn't do any sort of arts program in college, and so in many ways, like my arts program was just I saw the neo-futurist show. I honestly don't know how many times, but I would guess close to 300, if not more times. And so I learned a lot about honest performance and honest storytelling and making stuff for the present moment and for who you are in this moment, and kind of deciding that that's enough. And all of that was helpful when it came time to write a memoir, because it's like you don't want to overthink it. You just kind of want to be like, these are the things that felt important to me. This is the story as it seemed to me. And that's the best I can give you. I can't give you anything that's outside of my point of view.
Well, what actually prompted you guys to write this book? First of all, at all. Second of all, in this way where you didn't consult each other at all.
I had this idea probably in like the 9th out of the 10 years, I want to say. I've had this idea for a couple of years now. And it really just seemed, we're both writers. We're very different writers. We approach writing, I think, with very different voices. So I thought that would be interesting together. And I just, with one of the things we learned in neo-futurism and have continued to do with Night Vale is the joy of games, how interesting games can be to create work. And so this seemed a really interesting game to try to tell our stories as we remembered them without trying to make those memories work together at all. And instead make the entire thing about that difference in memory. It just seemed like an interesting game to me, and one that we would be able to do.
And I thought it was a great idea. So I said yes. Yeah, Joseph came to me he's like, I have an idea for this book. Do you want to do it? And I said, of course. And again, I love something that has specific rules and parameters. So it's 10 years, a chapter. We each do one side of it. For me, this is my first book length piece of art. So it was great to just have that sort of structure to jump in. So I'd be like, I just have to write this one. This is my assignment. I just have to write to that, which is a really, really great way to be inspired for writing, is to have a specific assignment.
Did you have like word counts that you said you would meet?
We did.
Or-
We were looking for, what was it, between 25 and 3,500 words per chapter, per essay, per person.
Yeah, I'm very into structure with work. It's helpful for me. So I often,
Yeah.
any book I'm working on, I like to go in being like, here's about how, like, this is going to be kind of a shorter book. This is going to be kind of a longer book. And then, especially with this, because we had a set number of chapters, it's the first 10 years. We knew how many chapters going in. And so that made the math a little easier of being like, well, I know I feel like I want it to be on a shorter book. I feel like it's kind of, you want sort of that fast moving read.
Yes.
And so then it makes the math very easy of like, well, we have this many chapters, just divide, and this
Divide
is about the average we need to be
by
hitting.
X. Yeah. That is one thing I really enjoyed about when I read the book, how snappy each chapter was. You were able to go back and forth, and it was fun to see how you each perceived what was going on and what you both found important enough to write about. When you looked back at your process, how did you get started? Because sometimes when I look back on, what was 2008 about, or what was 2012 about, I'm like I can pinpoint one or two things. Like, where did you get all of your information?
So, I mean, we often sit down and remember things together. That's something we do usually like on our anniversary, or when we go back to a place we've been before, we talk about being there before. So we do kind of continue the conversation about our past pretty regularly, because so much has changed over the course of these 10 years for us. So it's always been important for us to sort of remember where we came from and figure out how we got to where we are and where we want to go next. We talk a lot about that sort of things. But also I have, I'm lucky that I have all of my monologues and plays from the NeoFuturists that I can go back to, and I can look and be like, okay, so in 2012, what was I writing about on stage?
Yeah.
And it's, about moving in together and stuff like that. And then also we're lucky that we have this kind of well of social media. Facebook has existed the whole time that we've been together, and it can tell us, when we hung out together in that first year. It can tell us when we became friends. We have our Twitters and our Instagrams to show, we kind of jog your memory of when and how things happened. So we had that.
Speaking of Facebook, Joseph, you mentioned that you kind of knew Meg was flirting with you a little bit because she went and liked a number of your things. She serial liked a bunch of your things. Does that still happen? Is the magic still there?
Do you go through and like everything I post?
I try to support you. I still like everything you do for the most part in real life. So, yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed is that, there may be a couple of misalignments in memory in one way, or how you perceived it, right? What do you think is the biggest discrepancy, or what do you think, what is the thing that you probably are like, no, that's not what happened?
I mean, but there's not a ton of like, no, that's not what happened, other than like details of dates and order of events and where they took place. There's definitely some of those where it's like we remember things happening at different places or in a different order. There's some stuff where it's just like I wasn't aware stuff was happening. There's a story you're involved in. So during the Hurricane Sandy,
with
you, and she apparently decided to break up with me, which I was not aware of, and then she didn't end up doing it. So at the time I was worried about just being in a hurricane. I was completely oblivious to all of this. So this entire story of her being in Chicago and deciding to break up with me was a complete surprise to me.
Yep.
Well, I will tell you that I was also oblivious to that, because we had a great time. That was the first time, for those of you out there in the watching and listening audience, that was the first time I met Meg. And I was just like, I loved how you described me as Cecil's cool friend who had weed. Because yes, I was.
You still are.
I most definitely am. And I love that we that was how we met. And I knew nothing of you other than the NeoFuturists, and you were Cecil's friend. And I was like, oh, she seems so cool. But I wasn't sure if you thought I was cool too.
I thought
But
you were so cool. I remember because Cecil and I had been friends for years with the NeoFuturists together, and he had always mentioned you, like telling stories from college, my friend Symphony, and then I remember the first time I saw you, we were at some train station. I don't remember which, but you had met us there at the train. It might have been at the one at O'Hare because this was you came up the escalator and you were wearing these really cool boots and these like really tight spandex pants, and you were just like so confident and cute, and so like it gave Cecil such a big hug, and you were so excited to see you. I was like, oh, she's a good time. This is going to be good.
And I still to this day wear outrageous leggings and wild boots, and I generally have weed, and I'm always fun. So that's great. And then let's talk a little bit more about me. Another thing that if you read the book, friends, I was there for when you found your wedding dress.
In Portland.
In Portland, I remember we went to Tatiana's, and that was like we were just going there for looking for new show dresses. But like when you mentioned in the book, you talked a little bit about like what people put importance on when it comes to a wedding and things like that. And how a lot of people will be saying yes to the dress is a big deal. If you had it to do over again, do you think you would have done it the same way?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it was so easy. Like I've been a bridesmaid before. I'm sure you've been a bridesmaid many times.
Absolutely.
Where you do the thing where you go to the bridal salon and you have brunch and you sit on the couch and you pull out the dresses and everyone cries, and it's just a lot. And it's just not my vibe. So it was nice to just be like shopping for dresses and being like, oh, this is cute and it's white. Should we see if it works? And then tried it on and it worked. And I was like, great,
perfect.
Cool, done and dusted.
Joseph, I know the way you talk about marriage and your perception of where your relationship was going, it seems like it was like, yeah, this is the inevitable. This is where it's going to happen. Do you remember feeling that initially, or do you think looking back on it, hindsight, you were like, oh yeah, I maybe didn't know it exactly, or do you remember that specifically feeling that way?
I mean, I think the first moment I don't know when I started to feel it. Like I knew that the first time we mentioned the first time, both of us mentioned this moment in 2011, kind of when we flew back home for my dad's funeral. We had this moment where we first articulated that we both were like, well, maybe we are the people we spend our lives together with, that this is what this is. I've just never been a person for ceremony. I have not been to a graduation since my 8th grade graduation. I skipped both my high school and my college graduations.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I'm just not like a person who likes ceremonies. And so I think marriage felt not super important to me once we had made the decision to spend our lives together. Like that felt like the important decision. The ceremony aspect of it, I was fine with, but it just didn't. I think I was in no hurry. It didn't feel like the important part.
Well, it ended up working out quite well. And I remember your wedding was it was a lovely time, gal. Mm-hmm. It was a lovely time. Now I also love how you described like after your wedding, you taking the trash out and like doing all the work. But like, I feel like you had such a casual sort of wedding. You guys basically just threw a party, right? And I love how you both captured that. Do you think, were you happy with how everything turned out overall?
Yeah, I was
the ceremony and everything.
Yeah, I think I say it in the book. I think it's like wasn't the best day of my whole life, but that's okay. Like it didn't need to be. That wasn't.
Yeah.
It was like it really was just. I don't know how a big celebration and a big to-do could be the best day of my life, because it's just not my, like, I like to chill out and relax and go places and see stuff. So it's like a dress all day in a dress, talking to people. Like it was fun. I had a great time, but I've had better days of my life for sure. And with him, like we've We've had some really good ones. That's what I say in the book. I was like, I've had better days in my life, and most of them were in Hawaii on our honeymoon. So like that was, the honeymoon was really the selling point of the whole marriage thing for us.
Yeah.
I
spent
mean,
most
that's
of
a
the money
good
on
one. Hey, I
Yeah.
think that's the way to go. Now you guys were, throughout the book, we see that you guys are not only challenged by grief and loss, but you also have some really high highs. Do you think that's part of why it helped work out, because you saw like the worst parts of each other, the worst parts of your lives,
Yeah,
and the
I
best
mean,
as well?
our lives have been just mostly through sheer luck, really amazing, because this podcast we were making, found an audience, and that was just sheer luck, and that's led to some really amazing things. Yeah, and I do think like that makes a relationship easier when you're both going through a really incredible thing together. Like when life is fun through sheer luck, that does make the relationship easier. I don't know. I would hope so. I think so. That if we were both grinding our way through office jobs we hated, and we're living in that collapsing apartment in Williamsburg, that we would still be just as strong a relationship. But certainly, like getting to perform in the Sydney Opera House together just makes that relationship a lot more fun.
Yeah, it really, we're so lucky with all the things that we get to do, all of the things that we are afforded to do because of this really cool job that we have, that we wanted our whole lives. So we have the jobs that we wanted our whole lives. So that's an incredible feeling of satisfaction. I will say there's another side of the coin too, is that we have really stressful days. Having a podcast startup is not something that's very easy to do, to be running your own business, to be working together in your own business, to be traveling constantly. If you've ever been on a trip with a partner and it hasn't gone well, or a trip with a friend and it hasn't gone well, it's that, but it's every day. But
imagine doing that for 2 months straight.
and working the whole time. But we've found a way to make it work, and it's to the point where it's really enjoyable. So even the stressful days, we really can back each other up and support each other. And I was saying this last night with touring, it was like with our touring group, it's never us against each other. It's just us against the tour. So the thing that works about our relationship usually is it's us against the stress, not us against each other.
Right. But even through all of that, you found some common ground and something to fight for throughout it. And that is awesome. There were times throughout the book where, you mentioned fighting in front of people and things like that. Me knowing you guys, knowing that that's kind of sometimes your like language to each other, but it's never like, you always like over it in like a second. And I don't think everyone could be like that.
There's like,
has that become a shorthand? Like, is that like your shorthand a little bit sometimes?
I think there's like two different things happening. I mean, we occasionally have like fights that are not nice things we do in front of other people. I do think like part of it is Meg comes from like North Jersey Italians who talk very, very bluntly and do not hide feelings about things. And that is something that I had no experience with coming into the relationship, but that, I've been gradually molded into that. And so there is this a little bit of just, the North Jersey Italian thing of you just say what you mean and the other person says what they mean, and then that's fine. It's out there. And I think there definitely is that in our relationship.
Yeah. Also, like we spend pretty much all day, every day together. Most people during the pandemic do, but we did
absolutely
before that. So yeah, I guess we do have a little bit of a bickery thing, but it's our vibe.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But like you also talk about a little bit about how you each softened parts of yourselves, or I liked when you mentioned fitting jagged pieces of yourselves together. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like the edges?
Yeah, there is I am of the opinion that there's no such thing as like a soulmate or like a meant for each other. I think it's you grow together and you figure out what you need to change about you to work for the other person and what they need to change about them. And you, yeah, eventually over time, if you're patient and love each other and respect each other, you will kind of sand down some of those more craggly bits so that you can fit together better. And that else you just learn what the other person needs and how to give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just straight coming to some sort of compromise. Like, I would say that I am significantly neater than when we met, but also that Meg is significantly messier, that we kind of found a middle ground there. But there's other stuff that's just like, I don't think it's even like the neatness thing was a conscious effort on my part, but there's other stuff that just happens naturally. You start doing the same things together, you start developing shared interests, which leads to other changes. And I think a lot of that stuff just starts happening, that you start finding that you're like, oh, this is now a thing that we both like and we do together. And that's not something we consciously decided. It's just because we're both here and both doing it. Yeah.
And then also just Joseph was always very encouraging of me and my work, and wanting kind of, he's very confident in his work, and I've always really appreciated that. And he encourages me to be confident in mine as well. And so he's kind of always pushed me towards doing and making and not making excuses. I'm a person who can make a lot of excuses. And so having him there and having his influence has definitely helped me kind of push through that and just go forward and be confident. So
that's awesome. Well, because then you can fill in those parts of yourself and help bolster the things that you want to become a better person, a stronger person, a person you see yourself being. I did really enjoy that even in the toughest parts of your lives together over the last 10 years, each of you has been very encouraging of each other's success. And like you doing your show while Joseph was experiencing the loss of his father. But he was still there for you. And like, you also like helping him like work through those things. Do you think that was a turning point in your like was that a significant part of your relationship, when obviously the loss of your parent is going to be a significant thing for you? Do you think that showed you who Meg was as a person for you?
I mean, it definitely just makes you think a lot more seriously about the rest of your life, especially because my father died at the age of 56. He died quite young, and not to bring the mood down, but I think kind of in my brain, it sort of bookmarked that age as that's all I get. Like anything past that is a bonus, but I could easily die at 56. And so I think I just started reorganizing my life around that idea. I think that's part, Meg talks about like how focused I was on kind of achieving my career goals with writing. And part of that is I do think that because my father got sick quite young and then ended up dying quite young, I just started thinking in those terms of I got to get everything done now. And so, yeah, I do think like at that time, I started to think about the rest of my life, and I didn't see any version of it that I didn't want Meg to be there.
I have to say, I really enjoyed this book. Number one, because I love you both as people. Second of all, because even though I was there for a bit of this story, it was fun to see your personal perspectives. And now thinking forward to the next 10 years, what's on the plot for you guys?
Well,
I went and got myself in trouble. So where Joseph and I are having a baby next month. That's the plan is that we'll have a baby. So
the plan.
Hey, men plan, God bless. So yeah, we're expecting our first kid in a couple weeks. And
which, by the way, this is not a spoiler. It's like literally the dedication of the book.
Yeah. So if you have the book, the first page will spoil the end of the book. So we're entering parenthood and entering what's going to be working parenthood. So trying to figure out how to integrate our lives now, which are very child-friendly lives. We're both, I'm on the road when there's not a pandemic. I'm on the road 6 months out of the year. So, and Joseph is also has lots of book tours and work. So we're going to figure out what the next step of our lives look like as working parents. And yeah, I think we're gonna give it a try, see how it goes.
I mean, it really was a consideration going in of like, we understand that being parents is very difficult, but it also is this thing of like, we've toured together, so we've done something that is all consuming and difficult together, and we've figured out a system, and so that did give me some confidence of like, I feel like the same resources and the same dynamic we built through tour can allow us to be able to parent together.
Yeah, we're good at dividing up tasks based on people's strengths. So Joseph will handle X, I will handle Y, and it just sort of works out.
And, you know, for as long as we have been touring on the road, most bands have broken up. And you guys are still staying strong. Joseph, you're you're a pretty prolific writer. You've written quite a few books in the past 12 years, I'd say, right? You wrote
in the
anthologies.
last 6 years, this is book 9 I've released, and book 10 is coming out this summer. I'm releasing a middle grade novel called The Halloween Moon.
It's very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so excited to read it. So, and obviously that's not going to stop anytime soon. Meg, what are you like? This is your first book, but I have a hunch that maybe it's not your last.
Yeah.
I keep every day. I'm like, so have you worked on it?
Yeah, I have.
Write a book.
I have
Taskmaster.
I have a third of another book written, another memoir,
awesome.
book of essays. So yeah, so hopefully that will be out in the world one day. But yeah, that's something that I'd like to do more of, is to put words in print for people to read.
I mean, I love both of your voices, and Joseph, I know you don't do much nonfiction, but this was really fun, a really fun read for me, because you have such a way of describing things that makes you feel, that's visceral. I feel like I can understand the feelings. And Meg, I'm not gonna swear, you really crack me up because you're just so like, yeah, it's like a goofy twist on something that could have been a mundane situation, but like the way you see it, maybe it's your eye, just makes it so fun and different. How do you think those two voices played together in your book?
Yeah, I mean, it was a question going in, is like, will our voices be interesting together?
Mm-hmm.
I think they work because they are trying to do such different things. Meg does come out of like writing for an audience, and so there's this certain sense of like looking for the beats that are going to get a reaction from the audience. It's very like, it's very directed at you, and I think I'm a little bit more of an inward writer in that I'm just trying to spin some stuff up that seems pretty to me. Like there's a lot of it, and so I think those two styles really counterbalance each other well.
Yeah, I think that I'm always looking for a punchline or a button or an end or something, and whereas Joseph kind of is creating an ambiance, creating a moment that you kind of imagine yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Joseph very much is a scene setter and a crafter of words, whereas I am a crafter of jokes and beats.
Which I thought was wonderful, because it broke up the different feelings that we were feeling for each year. And I really did like that. What would you say was your favorite chapter to write? What was your favorite year to write?
I think that 2014 was my favorite year to write. I mean, I really liked it. There's definitely some chapters that were more difficult to write. Then there was ones that were more fun and enjoyable to write. 2014 was my favorite. I had a little
section. Do each of you have a little section that you wouldn't mind sharing with us, just to give us an idea?
Sure. So for the 2014 chapter, I did as a how-to. So it's a how-to guide called How to Propose Marriage. And it is a step-by-step guide about how to propose marriage. So I will read you step 1A.
Great.
And then the rest of you have either read it or will hopefully read the rest of the steps, should you ever need to know how to propose marriage.
I'm taking notes.
Okay. So step 1A is want to be married. This is a good place to start. If you don't want to be married, then by all means, do not do it. There is no dress or party or kitchen appliance that is worth entering into a legally binding agreement that you don't want to be in. If you do want to be married, it's important to examine why you want to be married. I always thought that one day I would get married. I grew up in a culture that placed a lot of pressure on women to find a man and get married. A culture that reinforced the toxic idea that a woman's value is derived from a man's desire for her. I see more and more that this culture is diluting, and I hope that it continues to do so. Getting married because you are indoctrinated into a culture that values you on a scale determined by a man's want for you is a terrible reason to get married. Even if you're in a same-sex relationship, it's important to consider this because, as I'm sure you know, heteronormative mores have a way of leeching into just about fucking everything. I knew I wanted to be married for sure in November of 2014. I was in Jersey visiting my family for the night and sleeping in my childhood bedroom alone. I called Joseph before I went to bed to say goodnight, and he didn't pick up. One of the strings holding my shit together popped, and I allowed myself to spiral down the spiral of what if. What if he was dead? What if he ordered chicken kebab because I wasn't home to cook for him and he got too excited because he loves chicken kebab and he choked on it? And I wasn't there to not actually know how to do the Heimlich, but still be helpful in the panicking department. What if he went out to see a show and fell down the subway stairs onto the tracks and was seriously injured and would need a lifetime of caretaking, but the police didn't have anyone to contact and he was hurt and all alone? As I slipped down this spiral, it wasn't fear I was feeling about him being in danger, it was lack of control. I wanted to be in control of what happened to him, but I knew that there was no way to do that. I wanted to be in control of what would happen after the horrible thing. I wanted to take responsibility for him. I wanted to make the chicken. I wanted to plan his funeral and box up all his books. I wanted to take him to physical therapy and make sure he took his medicines. I wanted to be his person. I wanted that decision to be made. I wanted there to be no question about who was supposed to sign the important papers or to pick him up. I wanted to love him for the rest of his life. Dark, I know, but if you want to marry someone, this is what you're signing up for. It's easy to be there for someone in good times, but actually wanting to be there in bad times, needing to be there to care for them, is a really good sign you want to be married. He turned out to be fine. He fell asleep early after playing video games and not choking on his chicken kebab, and he didn't hear me call.
So you did get chicken kebab after all.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, the one I had most fun writing was also 2014 because that was the one where I just kind of talked about touring memories, and it's always kind of a nice thing to reminisce about touring. But the one I'm probably most proud of is 2011, which was a very hard one to write. It was not fun because it's the year that my father died, and it was a very difficult year. But I like the end product. If it's cool, I'm going to read just the last bit of. So my father has died in July. This is now August, I think it was, that my sister got married.
September, I think.
It was August or September. It was late summer. So she's getting married a month or two after my father dies, and that's where we're picking this up. My sister got married in a park in Topanga at sunset. It smelled of flowers and herbs. There were photos of my father in the reception hall. We made do with what was left of us, our family. 4 years later, Meg and I would celebrate our wedding in the same park, but we didn't know that yet. My sister would have a son, and then another son. We didn't know any of that. After her second son, her heart too would fail, postpartum cardiomyopathy, and we would once again be in intensive care. This time, the story would end differently. My sister would walk out of the hospital alive, but we didn't know any of that. The evening of her wedding, there was only dancing and the signing of the ketubah as the white-winged moths flitted in and out of the lamplight. It smelled like lavender and sage, the wind coming off the chaparral, the same chaparral that I had recently sung about at my father's funeral. As I write these words, my sister's oldest son is 7. He knows all about his grandpa, although the two can never meet. That New Year's Eve was a quiet one. We stayed in at my tiny apartment in Williamsburg. Meg made lentil soup. I made rosemary raisin bread. I had been sick for a couple weeks, 2011 leaving the last of its claws in me as it departed. There hasn't been a worse year yet. I wrote this in 2019. But I don't doubt one is coming. Some year has got to be your worst one. Without the bad years, the good years may not seem so sweet. But I don't want to end this year on New Year's because that wasn't the important bit. Dates and holidays are arbitrary. Our lives are shaped by darker and wilder stuff. I want to end this year back in July, only a few days after my father died. Meg and I were in my childhood bedroom. I don't know if it was the day of the funeral or the day before or the day after. Those days sunk into each other, and I can't separate them easily in my memory. But the moment is clear. We're lying in bed. It's the middle of the day. We're taking a nap, I think, except we're both awake. We're lying on our sides. I could spend the rest of my life with you, I said. That'd be nice, she said. Neither of us said anything more for a while. It was the first time that the possibility of forever was presented to us, just days after the reality of how these things end was brutally demonstrated. We wouldn't get married for another few years, but my assumption from then on was that our relationship was a lifelong one. That moment was when the scope of what we were building together was made clear to me. And I guess that moment, along with many other moments, is the important bit.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, you guys. That was awesome. And I hope that shows to all of you out there how beautiful and heartbreaking and romantic and sad and amazing these two people are. The story is. You'll be laughing. I found myself, and I told you guys this earlier, but on my flight here, I was, reading the book and whatnot, and on not one, not two, but 3 forms of public transportation, I was audibly laughing or being like, oh, like, while reading the book. So I think that is a good indicator. So thanks for sharing that stuff with us. We have a few more minutes, so I wanted to take a look at our Q&A and see if there's any other questions. So I'm going to start asking questions there. So if you want to drop something in there, that's awesome, but we will start with this. From Ruby. Hi, Ruby. How would you feel about people getting quotes from your book tattooed? I'm thinking about a quote, not sure which, there's so many good ones, that's true, with a little squirrel over it. Do I have y'all's permission?
Yeah, just make sure it's spelled right.
We were in Eugene buying weed, I think.
I was going to say I was with squirrels. Speaking of the squirrels.
Oh, yeah. So
this is amazing.
I guess I'll tell this story instead.
Tell the Eugene story. Yeah, because we were in Eugene.
We're going to get to talking about your taxidermy. Just tell this story first.
Yeah, we ran into a guy in the street who recognized us, and then he showed us his hand, and he had the Night Vale logo tattooed on his hand. It was well done.
On the palm?
On the top, and it was like great. It was gorgeous.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a very strange and cool feeling to run into someone who has, a tattoo on the bicep or whatever, but a tattoo on the hand is really a commitment.
I will also say you don't need anyone's permission about what you tattoo on your body. It is your body, and you go for it, and you do what makes you feel cool. I'm very honored.
So Ruby asked and answered, yes, go get that tattoo, friend. Joseph, you have a Night Vale tattoo, right?
I have actually a couple. So very early on, someone at Eastside Ink, is that it? One of a pretty good tattoo place in New York was a fan, and she offered to give me a tattoo, and this was, I think, before it really exploded in popularity, and I was just really proud of this thing we made. So I got on my wrist,
yes,
upside down, at the logo. So that, and I got that one for free from a fan, essentially.
Oh, I didn't know it was for free. That's cool.
And then when we were in London in 2016, the day after Trump got elected, we had already had scheduled to get these tattoos. But I got a quote that a quote I wrote into the show. Oh man, it's impossible
Let me
to,
see with the light.
it's just impossible to twist my arm. It's here. It's just a wreath of flowers, and it says all tattoos are temporary, which is just a thing that's true.
You have a Night Vale tattoo, don't you? Somebody you have
I do. I'm not going to show it to anyone because it's on my lower back. Not like tramp stamp lower back, but on my hip. It's a stack of books. For those of you who know, I played Tamika Flynn, so it's appropriate. I actually got that when we were on tour in Eugene, Oregon. And that was great.
Always good times in Eugene.
Always, every single time. Gosh, I love Oregon. Meg, do you have any? You don't have any Night Vale?
I do. I have a Night Vale tattoo. I have, I have a cowboy boot, and in the stitching of the boot, there's the Night Vale eye.
Oh, I didn't see. I've seen the boot so many times.
It's a little sneaky. Night Vale.
I love that.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Carly. Hi, Carly. Has the pandemic made your relationship grow stronger? I suppose it has, but I know that this pandemic has made 1 year feel like 5 instead. Also, same. I want that Night Vale tattoo. LOL. Get it, Carly. That's what we say. But how do you feel about that question? Has the pandemic made your relationship grow stronger?
So in November of 2019, I was on an airplane on tour, and it was like my 17th flight in as many days. And Joseph wasn't with me, and I was really missing him. And I saw another couple on an airplane, and they were together, and they were just like living their lives together as a couple. And it just it really broke my heart. And so I got home from that tour, and I said to Joseph, I was like, I think I want us to spend more time together. Like I want to be a couple that lives every day together. I don't want to be apart so much anymore.
Specifically, you were like, I don't want to travel so much anymore, and I want us to be together all the time. So I just want to point out that she monkey pod this pandemic into existence.
I'm so sorry. But this year that's been a really tough year. I would prefer the year that I got to spend with my husband be on our terms and not on the terms mandated by the government and the terms mandated by public health and safety needs. But yeah, our relationship has grown stronger. Spending more time together has been really nice and really lovely. And having someone to go through this really horrible time with has been, has been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very glad we have each other during this time. It is weird because we wrote this book in 2019. We fully turned it in before the pandemic started. And so it definitely is weird reading this, that passage I just read about wondering when the next bad year will come. It is very interesting looking at a thing written just before all this happened.
Yes, I definitely agree. I'm going to answer your question too, Carly. I'm going to say, yes, it's made me, Meg and Joseph's relationship much better because we get to play Jackbox games together every week.
Every Monday night. We get together on the internet and we play Jackbox games. And we have for a year and a half.
It's been great though.
The most constant thing in my life during this pandemic is that I play Jackbox games with my friends every Monday.
For those of you who Symphony does the voice for the game Blather Round. If you're a Jackbox games person, recognize Symphony.
Symphony, do the voice. Do the voice.
Welcome to Blather Round. Yep. So we have a question from Laura. Are you having a boy or a girl? And congratulations.
Thank you so much. We're told it's a girl child. So
we'll see when she's, older, what she thinks of that.
Yeah. But no matter what your child decides their gender expression is, they will be a goth.
Yes, we're planning on raising our baby goth.
Yeah, and that one is not her choice. That one will be forced upon her. She's going to be a goth whether she likes it or not.
Yeah.
You're like, you can choose whatever religious expression, but you are a goth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great comment question. Ruby, thank you again. Not exactly a question, but I really appreciate the way Meg talked about being fat and the way society sees it without her saying it is purely a bad thing. Thank you so much, Meg. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier today, and I know growing up as a young girl in the 80s to 90s is and the aughts, our body images were changed, and you talked a little bit about not being what the typical stage theater type person would necessarily be in like society. How do you think that's shaped who you are today and
Oh,
how
absolutely.
you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I like from the ages of, like 6 years old until like 24, I was told that there was something wrong with the way I looked. And then I lost a bunch of weight and like was still seen as acceptable, but was still seen as acceptable only if I continued to diet. And so I like was still kind of on that the horrible hamster wheel of diet culture. And then yeah, so it's definitely shaped all of that. And then it's only been in the past couple of years that it's been like, oh, I don't have to play. I just can listen to my body and do what I want with my body. And it doesn't matter. My value is not determined by any sort of anyone else's perceived thing, which is a really hard cycle to break out of. But it is definitely shaped who I am and how I exist in the world. There's no way it wouldn't, because it's so toxic and pervasive. But
Absolutely.
do experience some relief from it now because of people who come out and say like, hey, I'm not playing this game anymore. Like this is not, like, yes, my body is beautiful and I am beautiful, but also like, I don't need to be judged based on my values, not determined by my beauty. Like that's not, and whatever someone else thinks of me is not how I need to think about myself. So yeah. So it's been a better couple of years. I'm canceling diet culture, y'all. Cancel diet culture.
And even Joseph, you talked about it a little bit about how, especially when we're on tour, and both of you can answer this, but like while we're on tour, we've noticed that early on, we probably drank more than we do now. We ate differently and more. And how do you think that affected you when you were on the road? I know you talk about it in the book, but now do you think that's different?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, it's so easy to get caught because you're the fun night out for your audience. It's really easy to get caught up in the feeling that you're having a fun night out, but you can't sustain a fun night out every day of the week. That's just not a way to live. And so, yeah, in the beginning, like we would go to a bar after every show and I would often like order like a second dinner, just get like bar pulled pork or whatever. And then you just feel lousy all the time. And so gradually when you start, I think I just started to feel better physically and mentally when I started thinking of it as just like work. I'm not gonna treat every day of work as a big fun day. The Megs rule of drink on tour Friday, which is just whatever day is before a day off. Then you can treat it as like a Friday night, and it's fine. But like, yeah, I think like if you're touring for a while, it just becomes part of your life, and so you have to find a way to make it a sustainable way of living for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's also like a really great, really hard way to learn to you have to listen to your body was on tour because we first started, we were drinking bottles of whiskey every night, and that is fun for a night. But if you do that every night, you're going to be exhausted and you're not going to be able to give it your all. And so it really was kind of a crash course in listen to your body. And when I'm on the road, my body wants some kale and to go get some sunlight and some exercise and like to really put the good fuel in it so that I can get the most efficient ride out of it.
And I know it's so difficult to continue to do that, to continue or your normal routine, like what you would normally do as your routine on the road. So I'm glad we've all found a way through all of that. We'll take this last question from Carly. What quote about romance/love is both of your favorites or one you can both agree on?
What book about romance, love?
Quote about love. Was it book or quote?
Quote.
No. I think live, laugh, love.
Nice.
No.
As long as it's on a wood plank.
Yeah, and we'll put it above our bed. What do you have one that you?
This one involves foul language, so a warning to those in the audience. But I do think a lot about the time I called you my partner. No, you don't want to do that one.
It's in the book.
It's in the book.
Oh God.
And what did you say when I called you my partner?
So it was a joke. I was being funny.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Joseph referred to me as his partner, and I was like, "This isn't a law firm. I'm your fuckhole. I'm so sorry." It's hard because we don't know who's in the audience, so it's like, hopefully, I'm talking to a room full of adults.
Earmuffs, everyone else. But yes, that is, you got to distinguish your relationship somehow, and I think maybe that is where we'll end this.
On that, unless do you want to end on a nicer thought, Meg?
Nicer thought.
You seem so embarrassed.
I'm not so. It's just like a very lovely quote about love. Love is good. My relationship advice I can give you is not a quote about love. Make your own quote about love. Write your own love story. But my relationship advice is always to ask for what you need from your partner, no matter what it is, whether it's something big, like I need you to love me every day for the rest of my life, no matter what I do, or I need you to remember to run the dishwasher. It's best to voice those out loud, because no matter how much someone loves you and no matter how close you are, they cannot read your mind. So that's my relationship advice: is ask for what you need and listen when your partner asks for what they need.
That's great. Joseph, do you have any relationship advice before we finish up?
Yeah, I would say just kind of never treat a relationship as like a thing that exists outside of the two of you. A relationship is an activity you're doing together. It's a thing you're constantly doing. The moment you start treating it as this entity that has an existence outside of you, I think it's the wrong way to think of it. It's a thing you actively do every day.
I love that from both of you. Thank you so much for being babes.
Thank you, Symphony. We love you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all three of you. Such a great joy to listen to all of you tonight. And to everyone who's tuned in tonight, thank you for dropping by. And please consider purchasing a copy of Meg and Joseph's new book by visiting us at powells.com. This is the book right here. And that's a beautiful canoe that those squirrels have as well.
Oh yes, that's the real squirrels. Yeah,
and you have it right there in your home, it looks like.
We do.
So
I bought them.
Very exciting. I'm going to hit this link for the book once again in the chat. So everyone that's here should click that link before we end this event. And then you can go check out the book on our website. Once again, Meg, Joseph, Symphony, it was so great to see you. And hopefully we'll see you in Oregon again sometime soon.
Thank you so much. And thanks to Powell's. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.